There comes a quiet moment in life that no one warns you about. It doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't announce itself. It often comes when the house is still, when the day is ending, and when you finally sit down after a long life of movement. In that moment, you realize something has changed. You no longer measure life by how fast you can go, or how much you can carry, or how many goals you can still chase. You begin to measure life by something else, something softer, something deeper, something that was always there, but easy to overlook when you were young. For most of your life, you were busy becoming someone, busy proving, busy building, busy surviving. You told yourself there would be time later, later to rest, later to reflect, later to slow down. And now, later has arrived. This is not a sad realization. It is a clarifying one, because when much of the noise fades, what remains becomes incredibly clear. In your later years, many things lose their importance. The opinions of strangers soften their grip. Old competitions no longer matter. The pressure to impress slowly disappears. And what is left is the truth. The one thing that matters most. It is not money, not status, not achievements listed on paper. It is peace. Peace with yourself. Peace with your past. Peace with the people you love. Peace becomes priceless. You begin to understand that a calm heart is worth more than a busy life. That quiet mornings are richer than loud victories. That being present matters more than being productive. When you are younger, you believe happiness lives somewhere in the future, in the next milestone, in the next success, in the next version of yourself. But later in life, you learn that happiness has always lived in moments you rush through. A shared meal, a gentle conversation, a familiar laugh, a simple day with no urgency. You begin to see that time was never meant to be conquered. It was meant to be experienced. There is a tenderness that comes with age. You feel things more deeply. Memories return with more weight. Small moments carry more meaning. A song can take you back decades. A smell can open an entire chapter of your life. A photograph can remind you of who you were and who you loved. You realize that love was never about grand gestures. It was about showing up, about listening, about being there, again and again. In your later years, regrets often whisper softly. Not regrets about things you didn't own, but about moments you didn't slow down for. Times you were too busy, too tired, too distracted. You realize you rarely regret what you tried and failed at, but you often regret what you postponed. And this realization brings wisdom, not bitterness. Because even now, there is still time. Time to forgive. Time to reconnect. Time to speak honestly. Time to be gentle with yourself. One of the quiet truths of aging is that strength changes its shape. It is no longer about endurance. It is about acceptance. Accepting your body as it is. Accepting your story as it unfolded. Accepting that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. There is great peace in that acceptance. You stop fighting who you were. You stop resenting who you are. You start honoring the life you lived. And in doing so, you give yourself permission to rest. Rest is no longer laziness. It is wisdom. You understand now that life was never meant to be a constant struggle. It was meant to breathe. In your later years, relationships become simpler and more precious. You no longer have room for pretense. You value sincerity. You value kindness. You value people who make you feel safe to be yourself. You learn that the right people don't drain you. They steady you. And sometimes, the most meaningful conversations don't involve many words at all. Just presence. Just shared silence. Just understanding. You also learn to let go. Not because you stopped caring, but because holding on too tightly became too heavy. You let go of grudges that once felt justified. You let go of expectations that were never realistic. You let go of the need to control outcomes. And in letting go, you gain freedom. Freedom to enjoy what remains. Freedom to appreciate what is. Freedom to live without constant resistance. One of the most powerful lessons of later life is realizing that worth was never something you had to earn. You were worthy even when you struggled, even when you failed, even when you were unsure. Your value was never dependent on productivity, or usefulness, or recognition. Your value came from being human, from loving, from trying, from enduring. In quieter moments, you may reflect on the speed of life. How quickly years passed. How seasons blended together. How moments you thought were ordinary became memories. This reflection can feel heavy at times, but it can also feel beautiful, because it reminds you that life was full, even if it was imperfect, even if it was hard. You begin to see your life not as a list of mistakes, but as a story. A story with chapters of joy and pain, of growth and loss, of learning and becoming. And every chapter mattered, especially the quiet ones. In your later years, you may find comfort in routine, familiar places, familiar faces, familiar rhythms. There is a safety in what is known, a warmth in what remains constant. And you understand that excitement no longer has to be loud to be meaningful. A calm day can be a good day. A peaceful evening can be a gift. A simple life can be a rich one. You may also notice a deeper appreciation for nature, the way light moves through a room, the sound of rain, the stillness of early morning. These moments remind you that life continues gently, without urgency, and you are allowed to move gently with it. Another truth reveals itself quietly. You do not need to be remembered by many to have lived a meaningful life. If you mattered deeply to a few, if you loved sincerely, if you left kindness behind you, that was enough. Legacy is not about being known. It is about being felt. And even now, your presence still matters. Your words, your patience, your stories, they carry wisdom that only time can create. In later years, fear also changes. Fear of failure fades. Fear of judgment softens. What remains is often a fear of unfinished conversations. So you learn to speak more honestly, to say what matters, to express gratitude while you can. You realize that love spoken late is still love, and forgiveness offered late is still healing. Nothing meaningful ever truly arrives too late. You may find yourself looking inward more often, not with regret, but with curiosity, understanding yourself with compassion instead of criticism. You begin to treat yourself the way you once treated others, with patience, with understanding, with grace. And this inner kindness becomes one of life's greatest comforts. As days slow, awareness deepens. You notice how precious ordinary moments are. A warm drink, a familiar voice, a quiet afternoon. These are not small things anymore. They are life itself. In your later years, you finally understand that the one thing that matters most was never something you could chase. It was something you had to allow. Peace, connection, presence, a life lived with awareness. And perhaps the greatest gift of all is this. Even now, you can choose how you experience your days. You can choose softness over struggle. You can choose presence over pressure. You can choose meaning over momentum. And in doing so, you honor everything you have lived through. Because the later years are not an ending. They are a distillation. A time when life removes what was unnecessary and leaves behind what was always essential. And what remains is enough. More than enough.